Executive Council approved 757 billion naira for dualization of 489-kilometer Abuja-Benin Road. Tinubu orders opening of borders with Niger Republic leads economic sanctions. FCCPC charges generator company to court over alleged obstruction of an investigation. Oil prices underpinned by U.S. inventory data. Attacks on Russian refineries. Asia markets range bound as Wall Street rally falters. India inflation data on deck. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Now time to get down to business as we bring you up to speed with happenings around the world. Now the Federal Executive Council has approved 873.23 billion naira for the Federal Ministry of Works for the execution of 3 budget items across the country. Minister of Works David Umahi, who disclosed this to journalists at the State House, Abuja, after the week's FEC meeting, also explained that the ministry's concrete roads policy is not responsible for rising costs of cement. State House correspondent Musbah Wahab reports on this and other issues that took center stage at the meeting.
Third in the year and ninth under President Bola Tinubu, Federal Executive Council meeting for this week was largely a review of recent results of the current administration's economic policies. The gains presented to the country's apex executive body are manifesting in agriculture, industry, trade and investment sectors. The recently inaugurated 620 metric tons per day tomato farm and factory in Ngaski, Kebbi State, as well as the flag off of a special agro-processing zone in Minna by the Niger State government were recounted as part of a project coming to boost the food security drive of the federal government. The ministers led to the briefing afterwards by the Information and National Orientation Minister Mohammed Idris also reviewed a new boost for the agricultural production and food security drive as the Central Bank of Nigeria has reportedly delivered 2.15 million bags of fertilizer to the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security.
It will go a long way at least to cultivate nothing less than 400 to 500,000 hectares of farmland. So this is timely. Like I said, this will boost agricultural production and which will mitigate the food inflation that we have today. And we will also make sure that that fertilizer gets to the intended farmer, to the last mile.
Other gains are also coming in support from the World Trade Organization (WTO) for a standard trade development facility, digital trade and cotton development.
All of these supports are coming because they believe in the administration of the president, they believe in his vision, and they said it clearly that the reforms that we're putting out, yes, might take some time, but that's the right way, and that's the right direction of travel. And so all of these supports are coming both technically and financially to give us the boost to make sure that we achieve this. When we get all of this support, the achievement of attaining a $1 trillion economy is within our reach.
On roads construction, the Ministry of Works got an augmentation approval from the FEC for Obajana-Benin Road. The 244-kilometer road initially awarded for light rehabilitation for 122 billion naira in 2012, reviewed for dualization in 2018, will now commence at 897 billion naira. The council also approved the Isheri North Lagos-Ogun Expressway for the sum of 2.23 billion naira.
And this is an alternative route to Lagos-Shagamu Road. And by the law, we're going to tow this Lagos-Shagamu when completed. And by law, for you to tow a road, federal road, you have to have an alternative. So this approval of about 2.23 billion to connect, this Lagos-Isheri North to Ogun State is a major breakthrough, so that has freed the Lagos-Shagamu for tolling.
The Ministry of Works also got approval of 114 billion naira for the outer marina shore protection, which was last done about 50 years ago.
Also, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has given the Ministry of Communications approval to source funds to finance 120 kilometers of fiber optic cable and boost connectivity across Nigeria. Bosun Tijani, Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy, disclosed this on Wednesday at the end of the Federal Executive Council meeting, presided over by the President. According to the minister, he briefed the council on what his ministry has been up to. Tijani said Tinubu gave the go-ahead for his ministry to source funds to invest in the fiber optic cable to cover the entire country. Now, the president has also directed the opening of Nigeria's land and air borders with the Republic of Niger. A statement by Special Advisor on Media and Publicity to the President, Ajuri Ngilali, also notes that the President directed the lifting of other sanctions against the country with immediate effect. Tinubu's directive is coming just days after the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government lifted economic and travel sanctions on Niger, Mali, and Guinea at its extraordinary summit on February 24, 2024 in Abuja, where ECOWAS leaders had agreed to lift economic sanctions against the Republic of Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea. Now, to speak on economic implications of this directive of opening Nigeria's land and air borders with the Republic of Niger is an economist, Tefa Abraham. It is good to have you on a Business Express after a very long while.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
Good. Now, the news is all over. The borders are wide open, talking about Nigeria and Niger Republic. Two brothers coexisting and together happily and in peace, not until something happened. What would you say are the implications of this, and what is the possible economic benefit of all of this?
The immediate benefit will be through resumption of trade between Nigeria and Niger, and we need some context to that. In the last 26 years, Nigeria's export to Niger grows every year by 6.05%, an annual growth of 6.05% every year in the last 26 years. Then in 2022 alone, Nigeria's trade volume with Niger was $226 million. Nigeria's export to Niger accounts for 85% of that. So when we close the borders, 85% of that amount, in other words, about $192 million that Nigeria should have gained from exporting its goods to Niger was cut out or was lost or was denied or was suspended or was channeled elsewhere. And that has ripple effect, not just for the Nigerians, but also for Nigerians as well. Loss in trade volume, loss in direct trade, export earnings, all these things were affected. So, but it's important to understand that the suspension of trade with Niger, or the closure of border, was not the decision of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu alone, but it was an ECOWAS decision. And also this reopening is also an ECOWAS decision. And that decision was taken at the time because of Niger's approach to the coup that happened and the need for ECOWAS to react.
We're talking business, but we can't divulge that completely from politics. It was a political decision, and decision that had to be taken by what the authorities told us. And now, yes, losses have been recorded. Now that this reopening is taking place, yes, relief is going to come on. But what are the lessons learned? How have we been able to survive these losses within this period as a country?
In terms of formal trade between Niger and Nigeria, that export gain we would have had from trading with Niger was lost. Like I quantified earlier, about $192 million was just lost like that. But that does not mean that trade did not go on. But that happened through illegal trading, smuggling.
And longer routes.
And longer routes, exactly. Having implication for both sides. And mind you, the longer route and the illegal trade will also be accompanied with illegal trading of other things that the Nigerian customs or NDLEA or Nigeria as a country will consider as contraband. So it just affected our formal relationship in terms of trade with Niger, and then increased the illegal part, the underground trade, the black market aspect of trading. So this resumption is a very good one because it will help us enhance our terms of trade in terms of how we trade with Niger, and then create jobs again for people who have been trading along the border in terms of Nigeria and Niger. And these people have been trading anyway for a long time, as Nigeria and Niger share a very long border with Nigeria. It's just generally, it's a good news as we look forward to trade and informal business reopening and both sides gaining anyways.
As good as this news is, you will agree with me that Niger is not just strategic to Nigeria, but also the entire sub-region. And also, just a few days ago, I think she's still also in the country now, talking about the DG of the WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, is in Nigeria to launch some trade-related programs to support a volume of trade from Nigeria to the other parts of the world. Now, with this relief we are having, are we going to see much more trade in this sub-region? And if we're going to see more of that, what happens with our strategic plan in trading in the AFCFTA market? What are the advantages, short-term and long-term?
Short-term is that generally the context of trade must be seen in the overall picture of international trade. And it is assumed that countries are expected to trade freely between each other or amongst one another. So the context is that once any country closes its border from trading with another country, what happens in international economics or the international politics of international trade is that can be interpreted as trade war, as starting an economic war. When you close your border to another country, you are telling that country that we don't want to trade with you, so go find your market elsewhere. They will also retaliate by finding a way to also hurt your own economy by diverting their own trade or that gain that you gain from them. International trade is based on win-win economic principle. So countries trade with each other based on the advantages they have over the other, with the aim that both sides will gain. And it is expected that the gains that we are to get from the AFCTA will also be enhanced. Thank God, like you pointed out, the DGWTO coming to Nigeria is all in the bigger global picture of enhancing trade amongst countries worldwide. Just like we'll be happy to have other countries buy from us what we produce locally in Nigeria, they will also be happy to see us buy from them. So it's important that going forward, countries should be very slow how they use the weapon of border closures with other countries, because it's interpreted as trade war, and those countries retaliate. Not just them retaliating, but also their own international friends, trade friends that they have, and that can have gross consequence with Nigeria. I also hope that just like the border has been reopened for Nigeria and Niger, we'll also be looking at what happened also in Benin Republic, Cotonou, and all those areas. Because like I said earlier, it's international trade and there's trade war, which happens by way of retaliation. But trade for everybody is a win-win, because goods are produced, sold, jobs are created, taxes are paid, and generally there's mobility and opportunity for growth and development for those countries.
There's been a little bit of a challenge talking about production of food crops in Nigeria owing to some level of insecurity and finances, where we have seen the government taking very strategic steps to ensure that production of food increases as they tame insecurity in all parts of the country. Now with these efforts coming up, where do you see Nigeria in the next few months into the next few years?
It's very clear that part of the supply hiccups we have in our food supply is as a result of insecurity that affected rural areas and made it difficult for farmers to go to farm. But that effect has accumulated over a long period of time. So even though production is still going on, the supply gap has increased. So as the government looks forward to addressing insecurity, which is a very brilliant move, it will curb that challenge and then increase food production, but not immediately, not this month, not next week. So while we're addressing insecurity, we still need to consider the option of food imports. Remember, in the context of import and export, in the context of international trade, we must still look for what we need to import so that other countries too can, what we need to export, so that other countries too can buy from us. It's very vital. Assuming that no country should assume that in this era of globalization and international relationship, any country will just close itself and grow on its own. It's important to still consider that role of trade, even in addressing our food insecurity problem, just as the country is already doing its best to address rural insecurity, and then also encouraging farmers to go back to farm. It takes time for harvest to come and for the food supply gap to cover the demand gap that has existed over time, which has also been a very strong component in driving overall food inflation. So nice move in terms of addressing insecurity so that we can address food insecurity, but let's not also rule out the option of international trade, looking for what we can get from other countries to close the supply gap that we have in particular food value chain processes.
Well, just yesterday we saw another handshake between the monetary policy authorities talking about the CBN and the fiscal authorities talking about agriculture, where the CBN have decided to go beyond the monetary policy issues to support the Ministry of Agri, to support farmers with fertilizers. Is that a good move?
The inflation phenomenon we have in Nigeria is not a monetary phenomenon, because the inflation we have almost 29% is largely driven by the food component of inflation. So clearly, that's not a monetary phenomenon-driven inflation. It will be a monetary phenomenon if it's just strictly distortions from quantity theory of money, velocity of money, not equating to price and quantities. Treasury bills would have been sold to mop up excess liquidity. But because of the food component, we need to address the supply gap. And because of the supply gap in food, the demand for food is high. So prices went up. So that is why CBN is thinking around this, partnering with other agencies to see how they can coordinate monetary policy, fiscal policy, income distribution coordination to achieve desired target in monetary policy variables. Now, the idea of trying to address access to fertilizers would be nice, but we need to learn a lesson from the previous administration. The CBN should do that using the Ministry of Agriculture. The CBN can initiate that move, quantify the amount that needs to be pushed into that fertilizer value chain or supply, but it should be coordinated through the Ministry of Agriculture, so that unlike the other era, the CBN will not be seen replicating what MDs are doing, thereby creating confusion among stakeholders in the agricultural chain who should be listening to the Ministry of Agriculture, but rather also trying to listen to what the CBN is doing. So nice move again, but CBN coordinated through the Ministry of Agriculture.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tefai Abraham, for sharing such a deep insight with us at this particular point in time. I tell you, we have missed your contributions. Good to have you at this time.
Thank you very much.
Well, moving on, let's now take a trip to the commodities market. extended gains in Asian trade on Thursday after a surprise drop in the U.S. crude stockpiles indicated strengthening demand, while possible supply disruptions following Ukrainian attacks on Russian refineries also underpinned prices. Brent futures rose 10 cents to $84.13 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was up 7 cents at $79.79 per barrel. Both contracts had risen about 3% to a 4-month high on Wednesday on the elevated U.S. demand outlook and heightened geopolitical risk. Now, the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, has dragged a leading generator company in Nigeria to a federal high court in Abuja over alleged obstruction of investigation. Acting Executive Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer Adamu Abdullahi disclosed this, said they embarked on the investigation because of the high prioritization of the electricity power industry, both from a primary and substantive production and alternative power sources standpoints. The charges concern the target's actions during the execution of the search warrant, and thereafter the Commission considers obstruction of justice and lawful investigation and failure to comply with lawful requests to frustrate the investigation. The charges allege violations of sections 28 subsection 5, 33, 110 and 111 of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission. Now let's take a quick look at the currency market, where Naira gains for straight days in official market despite the UK agency's prediction. Now let's see how much the Naira is exchanging for other currencies. While the Nigerian exchange opens this morning for transactions, we'll bring you up to speed with happenings in the market as of yesterday, where investors gained 273.02 billion naira as the whole share index advanced by 0.47%. The total volume traded declined by 42.21% to close at 326.95 million naira, valued at 9.12 billion naira, and traded in 9,570 deals. Transcap was the most traded stock by volume with 38.95 million, while Nestle was the most traded stock by value with 1.50 trillion naira units traded. Now let's take a look at markets around the globe, where Bosede Abel is standing by. Bosede, how is the market looking like?
Hello, Benny, and welcome to the global markets this morning. The producer price index, which measured wholesome inflation, is set for release before the U.S. trading session kicked off. Economics polled by Dow Jones anticipated headline PPI to have climbed by 0.3% in February, or 0.2% after excluding food and energy prices. However, the Dow Jones Industrial Average topped 0.20%, S&P 500 0.21%, and Nasdaq Composite also rose 0.36%. European markets were headed for a lower open Thursday, with investors keeping an eye out for another key U.S. inflation readings for February. DAX is unchanged this morning, while FTSE topped 0.3% at 7,772.17. The CAC 40 of France is also unchanged at 8,137.58 basis points. Now, Asia markets were mixed on Thursday after Wall Street's tech-fueled rally dissipated, with investors focused on Japan's spring wage negotiations as India's wholesome inflation data We see the Nikkei at 0.29% across 38,807.38, while the Shanghai dipped 0.18%. The Hang Seng Index followed suit at 0.80% across 16,945.96 basis points. While it's a slow start for most Africa markets, with South Africa and Namibia's all-share index resuming red at 0.18% and 0.03%. That's the market review this morning, as investors are optimistic that the market is going to be positive before the close of trade this today being Wednesday. That's the review. Benny, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bosede, for that update. And this is where we end today's edition of Business Express. We value your feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube and other NTA's online media channels. Business Express returns tomorrow, Friday, at 3 p.m. Keep a date with us as you keep thinking and doing business.